specification.
Hello everyone and welcome. Γεια σας και καλώς ήρθατε. Hola y bienvenidos. Hello and welcome to yet another live coding until it's Next.js. Until today we'll be back to our Next.js app that we worked so hard on going through the Next.learn free course. We had a few successful episodes on it and we created this lovely, kinda realistic dashboard app that you can search stuff in. Lots of cool features. But today we're going to be adding internationalization. I'm your host, Johnny, and I'm here for internationalization, for many different languages to be added. We have done the same thing with SvelteKit. So after the successful live streams implementing this dashboard, following along the Next.learn course, we went and did the same thing, but with SvelteKit to compare and contrast. And you'll notice that the SvelteKit version, besides the view transitions, which are much easier to set up with SvelteKit, also has internationalization, also has different languages. So I've added English and Ellinika, Greek here, and you're welcome to look at the open source and free as always code and add your own if you wish. But that is not a SvelteKit exclusive feature. That's not made easier with using SvelteKit over Next.js. That's something we can do into the original Next.js dashboard. So that's what we will be doing today. And why? Because not everyone in the world speaks English, or even more so, not everyone in the world has their preferred language be English. So let's try to hit more markets. Let's make our app more convenient for some users by adding internationalization. Traditionally, internationalization is very hard to do. It is a bit easier. We have more tooling today, and it's much harder to do if you haven't thought of it in advance. But that's the case. Most of the time you have an idea, you want to go to market, you want to release something, and you don't really think, oh, I'm also gonna hit the Brazilian market or whichever else. And then going back to refactor and change the foundation in order to add multilingual support, it's harder. So that's what we'll be attempting to do today. If you look at the Next.js docs, they do have a section on internationalization with the modern app router Next.js setup with Next.js 14, but that's not what we'll be doing today. We'll be following along quite a lot, but at some point they will tell us that you need to prefix every route in your app with the locale. So en, el, de, all of those locales, any locale that you want to support, you'll want to prefix your app with it, which is a way to do it for sure, especially if you're a big company, but it's not my preferred way to do it. And especially if you have an app live, you don't want to tell people, all right, all your bookmarks are broken, or you'll visit your bookmark and then you'll end up somewhere else. That's a bit inconvenient. And especially in a dashboard app, it could be the case that I want to just copy and paste an invoice in this case, and paste it in Slack, on Discord, on WhatsApp, whatever, to a colleague and tell them, have a look at this. What do you think of this? Edit this. Is this correct? Should I update this? And then, if my preferred locale is EL, then they'll get the EL version, and maybe they don't know Greek and they won't know what to do. They won't be able to reach out and change the language. Well, if you do it without a prefix or without hosting your localized apps in different domains, then you just have the one link to share and everything is easier. This is one of those things where there are drawbacks to whichever way you go. It's not like, oh, use separate domains and it's going to be perfect, or do the language local prefix and it's going to be perfect, or don't do anything and magically figure out the language. But I do think the most realistic way to do it, the way most, especially startup people would do it, is you have the single location, specific URLs, and then you do some other sort of magic to figure out whether you should actually be displaying stuff in English or Greek or whichever language you're going to support. All right, so we do have a big agenda to get through today and get everything done. The first thing to do is, I guess, did I explain internationalization, localization? we want to do it because we want to hit more markets. We want our users that don't have the English language as their preferred language to have a fallback option, another option to use. And the difference between internationalization and localization can be that it's all Greek to me. If I were to translate that literally in Greek, it would be αυτά για μένα είναι ελληνικά, but that doesn't make sense. You need to do a localized version of it. You need to say αυτά για μένα είναι κινέζικα, because that's what a Greek person would say. So sometimes it's about knowing the lingo, I guess, knowing the locale, knowing the market that you address, and be able to adapt the language. So not doing literal translations and not even doing translations at some point. Some things may be missing in a version of your application, but that's a bit too into the weeds. So after explaining this, I consider this done. I will switch to the desktop view, and what we'll do is get the user's language preference in our Next.js middleware. So in this purple tinted browser, my top language is English, and then it's Greek and some other languages. But on this one, the teal one, my preferred language is, let's actually go here. My preferred language is Greek first. And that's our first step into knowing what we're gonna be displaying to the user. We're gonna first check into your preferred languages. So you can go to Chrome or your other browsers, Firefox, any one browser supports this, and actually say that I am willing to see things in English, Greek, French, whichever languages you are willing to see things in, and your order of preference. And developers, the servers, do have access to that preference, and therefore can change their content to suit your needs. So that's the first thing we're gonna do, and we're gonna do it in Next.js middleware. However, if you followed along with the Next.learn course, you'll know that we have added authentication to it. So if we look at the example for adding internationalization, you'll see that we do go to middleware, we do some stuff here, but that's not the middleware file that we have. We cannot create a brand new one. We don't just have a middleware method. What we have by going through the Next.learn course is an app where you can actually log out and sign back in. And that's achieved by middleware again. But the middleware that we've added is exported by Next.auth as if by magic. So we wrote this file, but maybe like we don't really know what this is doing. And the question is, well, where do I write my extra code? Where do I write the code where that will make me able to check the user's language headers? And the answer is that the default export of the middleware TS file that is at the root of your app. So side by your app directory is a good way to put it, because I, like most sensible people, have a source directory for my source code, but a lot of Next.js stuff doesn't have a source directory. This is optional, so you may have your middleware at the root of your project. But the point is, middleware has to go, the middleware TS file has to go next to the app directory. So wherever your app directory is, that's the level that the middleware TS file should live. And I'm explaining this a few times because I have been caught out in the past. There were versions of Next.js that were looking for middleware files elsewhere or deeper into your app as well. But now this is what you should be doing. Middleware goes in the same level as the app directory. In my case, the source code, I hope in your case too, because just having those files in a source directory makes life easier. So that file, whatever you export as the default export, is going to be the middleware that runs, that the Next.js takes care to run for every request. So we can imagine that Next.auth, we pass it the auth config, and then we export this method. I guess this has to be the middleware that Next.auth runs for every request. And you can also export middleware from this file, and that would also be picked up as the thing to run in before every request as middleware. But I think those two are exclusive, so you can either do one or the other. What we actually want to do now is apparently that you can call this method here directly, and in there, that's where you'll have access again to the Next.js request object and be able to make use of it and do stuff with your middleware. So if I want to get the user's language headers, so user languages, we can check request headers get accept language. And if I console log this to see if this is even working, so at the server you can see that the user languages are these right here. So in this window, if I refresh this page, you can see that they run again and it's all fine and dandy. So I have access to those and we're going to do more stuff later, but just to prove that calling this is not breaking the existing app and the existing OS functionality, or maybe it does. Let's see. So in theory, I should be able to log in again, and that's just fine. And I should still be able to sign out. But that doesn't seem to work. So maybe we'll need to have a look at that at some point. So what happens if I just have a look here? At the application is what I'm trying to find. Yeah, this is like the Greek window. It's a bit different. So here, the dashboard, I have the cookies, click sign out. I don't get sign out, so that's not good. If I clear the cookies to manually sign out, I still don't get kicked out to log in. And if I put in the wrong password here, all right, at least I do get invalid credentials. That's something. So yeah, it looks fine. It's just that the redirect functionality doesn't seem to be working. It doesn't work because I didn't like it, so I removed it. So in the SvelteKit app, we did something, I guess, even better, where if you are logged in and you click to log in, well, we're not going to do it now. If you're not logged in and you click to log in, you go into login with GitHub. But if you are logged in, you can still see this screen. And if you are logged in, you jump straight into the dashboard that you are here. So in this case, I am logged in, I click, and I should go straight to the dashboard, but of course I deleted all my cookies. That's by the by. The important thing is, just to prove that this works, and we're using the same library, just not the Next.js specific implementation of it for the SvelteKit app. The thing is that in the Next.learn course, they really wanted us to force a redirect, so you literally could not go to the main route ever again if you are logged in, which I do hate, so I did remove it here. But I guess this is the point where we could be checking if you are logged in and you're not on the dashboard route, you should be kicked into the dashboard route. Is it not here? Maybe it is. Does this not run? Check. It does run. Does it not return and redirect? doesn't make it here. It looks like, but we are logged in. So what's that about? Won't be debugging this for long because this is the internationalization episode. So we have a user here, and are we not on the dashboard? Maybe we aren't. It wouldn't be a Next.js and chill stream if we didn't sidestep a little bit. So how do we not make it here? Doesn't really make sense. Do we think we're not in dashboard route? Guess so. What does the path name start? Is that something wrong? So yeah, this one, don't like. So what's the path name again? Favicon.icon, not unlikely. On this one, it's slash dashboard. Interesting, and we don't have a user anymore. Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. So for this one, who is on the dashboard customers, we don't have a user, they say. They cannot sign out. When they do sign out, they're not getting kicked out. And when we log in, something is funky going on. But anyway, let's move on with our lives and see what else we can do. So we'll figure out the authentication stuff. In the end, the main thing is let's do the translation stuff as advertised. The point is, this browser, the TL one, wants to see Greek if it's available. So we do have the user languages here because we're taking the accept language headers. And as the Next.js Internationalization docs are saying, we're getting the headers actually from the user instead of making it up here. We can use a library called Negotiator, which doesn't have TypeScript types, but it has it in the types repository. And try to run it and find the available languages here. So we're going to use it slightly differently, but we'll make it work. The point is, we need to ban install the negotiator, this negotiator library. And I do believe we do not want to install types negotiator as well. Like maybe at the end of this method, we need to return the response or something. Well, I'm not sure. So how I found this out, because the docs for this beta next auth thing aren't the greatest. This is where they say, if you want to run other middleware as well, then you can, in your middleware, do this. So call the auth method and with a callback, and it's going to have the request. And that's it. They don't say you need to return the request in the end or anything like that. So who knows? We'll figure it out. For now, we have the negotiator thingy. And we want to use it not quite like this. I have the library here. you can actually get a single language, for example, and try to do it like this. By passing the acceptable locales here and the headers. So in some examples, you'll see people just passing the request object here, but it's not totally compatible with what the negotiator request object is, the Next.js request object. So what you can do is just pass the relevant headers. But the signature there is also quite peculiar. I don't think it does like case insensitive headers. So you need to say lowercase accept language, and then pass in the user languages that we've just got. And then we can pick a language from that. Negotiator, we're gonna get from port negotiator, I imagine. Not required. Then here we can even do if we have the user languages. So if this header is actually set, then we can say the locale is whatever this returns, but we need to pass to the language method the available locales. So today we're going to say that our available locales are en and el for Greek for now, and maybe we'll do Spanish in the end. And here we can say, all right, out of those two, is there anything that this person is going to accept? But maybe there won't be, and we still want to show a website. We don't want to tell them, sorry, we don't speak any of the languages you understand. So we can default the locale to en, or maybe we can even have a default locale en here, or even say that the default locale is the first of the available locales. So the locale is going to be this, and then we can reassign this into something. Let's say const user locale this, and then if user locale, we can reset the locale, and then in the end we can console log the locale and figure out what else magic we're gonna do. So in this case, EL is the preferred locale of this teal browser. It's first, and for this purple browser, not here, this is a live dashboard, you can click and go there. In here, the preferred locale should be EN. So because my language preferences are different, different users will get different locales so long as they're supported. And let's double check what happens. It's available so locale, we're just Mandarin. And none of my browsers say that they prefer Mandarin, or I can Mandarin, that I can speak it or understand it and read it. It still defaults to Mandarin because I've said that this is the default locale. So sorry that none of your setup languages are what I have, but it is what I have. I need to show something to you. All right. So first part is done. We know what the user prefers and what we can realistically show to them. What's next? So is this typed at all? It is. Is this also typed? Another thing? Yeah, you just get the request and that's it. So what we want to do with this locale is not console log it, is actually use it. And the place where the Next.js docs say you should eventually use it is in the core layout or on your core page or wherever you do the HTML lang. So your core layout, they do say in various places in the docs where that the core layout should be the only one that returns the HTML element. I'm not sure I believe it. The docs are sometimes inconsistent, but that's what they say. And what they want us to do is check if there is a language prefix. If there's not, then redirect them to like EL dashboard. But that's not what we want. We want to use the same URL for everything. Just respect the user's preferences. But then how do we get the correct language to add here? So if we go to our core layout, we've hard-coded lang en. How can we pass something to the root layout if we're not going to do a lang or local parameter? Well, one way I've seen work is just to make up a header. So you can do like request headers set, I think. And then you can make up your own header and call it xlocale or something. Usually when you prefix with x a header, it's for internal use. You signify it's not really a real thing, it's an internal thing. So if we set this header, then hopefully in our core layout, we should be able to get it by running the headers method. And let me double check. I think it's just headers thing. You can get all the headers and you call them. So can you not just do like this in one? Let's import this from Next headers. I18n, didn't want to find it. And now we should have the locale sent, and we should be able to put it here. However, because this is like a header we made up, TypeScript doesn't know the internals of our application and how we have the middleware that always has this. Maybe Svelte can do something like this because it has a more holistic view of what's happening. But here we need, probably for safety, to default to something. So we can actually default to our default locale. And because it feels a bit weird to export stuff that's not a dedicated approved Next.js method from middleware, we can actually have a source lib i18n file that has all our convenient variables and methods related to internationalization. So in here it's where I'm gonna say these are the available locales, this is the default locale. I'm gonna use it from there, import it, and the middleware. And in my layout, now I can say fall back to the default locale. Now it should be happy, because if there is nothing, then you can set the language here. And if my calculations are correct, that should mean we change the language here, but maybe they're not correct. So here, I guess that made up header was not set in the middleware. This one. So can I just log? And see what happens. It's EL, but I can only imagine that in this layout, this is not correct. And it's going back to the default locale. Let's also do it this way, just in case there's like some weird magic happening. Next headers list, get this, whatever. Here it says you cannot set or delete the outgoing request headers. Sure. I did see a trick somewhere of that being done. I didn't completely make it up. So let's try to find this. Like I've done this trick before. How did I do it? I'm not doing the same thing exactly. Language thing. Append. Append to the response. Sure. Append it to the response. What's the response? Do we just make it up? Like this? Sure. Just put this simple code on the side. Go back to here. Say, all right, here, don't mess with the request. You shouldn't do that. The request has the headers it has. And the response is what we want. But the response is going to be next response, I guess. Just call it and it magically appears. Is it new next response? Is it like next.response? Let's have a look. We do get it from the super base method in that case, but I think it's next response. Let's see. Producing a response. This response, next. I think that's correct. So we do like next response dot next for some reason. Right, and here it's doing the thing where the next headers are added like this. So that should be fine. Right, so they're it looks like they're kinda modifying the request headers, but in a different way. What they're doing is creating a new headers object here from the request headers. Sure, they're doing lowercase here, so let's do lowercase. Then we're gonna return next response next, and the request is gonna have the headers here, the new headers. Kinda makes sense. See if that makes a difference, and indeed it does. So we cannot modify the request headers directly, but we can create a new headers object and do all of this Next.js custom magic to actually append our made up xlocal header here on the layout. So we don't need to change anything. And as it is with headers, they should be case insensitive. So that's why this still works. So now this correctly goes to the TL1 to EL, so that you can see it, even if it's zoomed out. And on purple Chrome, we should still be on EN, because that's my preferred language. Great. So we've made it so far. It does mean that if the server does return a language that I cannot read, Chrome will offer to translate it for me. So in the case where I said I can speak Mandarin and that's it, and I got EN, then it will correctly tell me, would you like to translate this? So that's good, being able to have the appropriate language, the language match in your document here. But that's not really the case, because we don't have any translated strings in the app, not yet. So I think I can mark this as done. We have the user's language preference. We have added it to the HTML. And now we need to start showing internationalized messages. And we're going to do it in a custom way first, but still kind of standard. And then we're going to do it using the inlang format and Paraglide JS, which is a fresh new drop in the internationalization ecosystem. Quite exciting. The first way we're going to do it is the one that the Next.js guide would have you do. So even though they say, all right, redirect them to the correct route, and then your layout will need to get the lang from the parameter there, the route parameter, then you can have like some dictionaries or whatever, and then you'll have a getter for those dictionaries and only dynamically import the one that you need, just in case, I guess, that you'll have some of them client side and you don't want to load like every language that you have there. But that's by the by. We'll try to do it this way, and then we'll try to do it in an even more standard way that has much better tooling and not something that I made up. Also of note that they're not kinda only showing you how to use this with route params for nothing. It's not that they're crazy, they're excellent, they're geniuses over there. But the moment you call headers, then they cannot statically generate your app. They cannot create your app at build time. And I guess that's what they're trying to avoid. If you have dedicated routing for each language, if you have en/dashboard and el/dashboard and de/dashboard, then Next.js will know at build time, all right, I can actually build this page in advance and only serve this, the build page. If you do what we're doing, you'll need to look at the request in order to understand what to serve to the user. So at the moment, they cannot like prepare the statically built websites anymore. If you do this, you are opting out statically building anything. You're going to be using a server on every request. But that's not bad, because you can still cast things accordingly. You can still stream responses back and have a great user experience. I do think the drawback of multiple URLs is more than the drawback of I'm not able to statically build the site. I think we're moving away from that for more interactive sites. Anyway, if you have like a blog site, that makes sense to build it all in every language you support. But for this one, I do think the dynamic routing makes more sense. Has fewer drawbacks. All right, so let's internationalize. Oh, now this is working. So I guess, so I cannot like log, I don't get kicked out. So I guess I did need to return a response at the end. So I should amend the docs. I should go to amend the docs of this. Now if I look out, I get kicked out. No, did I make it up? Guess not. Does the sign out do nothing? I guess so. Did we implement sign out functionality? Maybe we didn't. Maybe we just said we did. Maybe it's broken. Maybe I get automatically signed in again. I'm not sure. Unclear. Anyway, delete all those cookies. Yeah, I get automatically authenticated. Maybe I have a refresh token somewhere. I do have a database adapter now, which we didn't have before. I think it automatically authenticates me. That's the situation. But it doesn't kick me back to the main route here, which I don't understand. I guess the authentication runs first, and they're like, but no, it doesn't make sense. Maybe the authentication runs second after they decide I shouldn't be kicked out. Anyway, that's by the by. The important thing is, how do I make this dynamic? This is also quite tricky because it's like a strong link. It has like actual HTML. This would be like an anchor. So we should break it up into 3 pieces, I suppose. But maybe we won't. In any case, let's kind of follow what they're saying. They're saying a common thing to do is to have an en.json, nl.json, local.json object that has all your strings and put it in a dictionaries directory. That's common. We're gonna go with messages because messages is what Paraglide has as the default, and I've seen the default before. I've seen dictionaries before, so it doesn't really matter. Just remember where you've put them. And maybe controversially, we will put it in the source directory because at least for now, it is source code. So for this string, what should we call it? Let's create a messages directory and have an en.json. This JSON, let's say like index hero. And again, many companies do stuff like nest their localization strings, like the index page has this. Maybe the hero has like a title and then has a subtitle and then has a CTA button and all of that stuff, which I do think is very handy. But as it stands now, or as it stands by Friday stream where we tried it, Paraglide does want a flat structure of your strings. Supposedly, well, I'm sure that's the case, because it makes it much easier for the compiler to understand what to drop out and what not. If it's nested, then they haven't quite figured out how to do the method magic that they're doing to be able to strip out unused strings. But that's by the by. What I am saying is that we'll use this ugly camel case format. I think you can use underscores here. You cannot use kebab case, but we'll go with camel case, and we'll say that our index hero is this. And we can save that. And we can have a very similar EL JSON, EL for Ellinka Greek, and translate this. We will be using machine translation later, so you won't see me typing as much, and I'll also use the strings that I've done in the previous live stream. Brought to you by Versal and Johnny. Yeah, why not drop my name there? I'll drop your name as well. As always, hello to the chat too. Let me know what you're working with this week. I hope your week is going great. All right, so we have these messages that we want to use in that hero, and what they suggest to do is have a server only dictionary here, and they conveniently use JavaScript because doing it with TypeScript is going to be harder to type, but we'll figure it out. And I guess they're trying to collocate this. That's fine. Maybe in our i18n Internationalization directory, you can do this. You can call the server only. Not. And then import. Are we doing like dollar imports? How do we do it here? Dollar source. Did I make that up? Paths alias. It's at, not dollar. Dollar is spelled. So let's do the same. Bring in the other one. And dictionary string, get this. But we can also say, have a guard, a type guard here. I think if we do this array as const, we can say that the type of available local is type of available local number. So it's either en or el in this case. And our type card is gonna be determining whether the locale is an available locale. The type of locale is it string. Sure. And available locales includes locale. So now we can do a ternary here and check your string. Then return this, or else dictionaries default locale this, or return the default dictionary. It should never happen that this locale will be called by like a random string and not one of our two available locales, but you never know. And we're keeping TypeScript happy. So, right, we have the dictionaries, we have the get dictionary method. We need to find this hero. We need a hero, in other words. And actually use our dictionary. So it's this. And here we want to add the multilingual stuff. How we do that? We can say that the messages, or M, as is commonly abbreviated to, get dictionary. Hello Sartak from India. Maybe we'll be trying to add a different language as well, even though we don't have RTL support. But I would love to add some. Right, so get dictionary. Again, what's the locale? We don't know unless we call the headers, which is not ideal, but we will be fixing it eventually. So in this page, we need to again do the same trick we did on the layout. So on the layout, we need to make this async, get the next headers method, get the locale, get the default locale, or maybe we don't need to do that. But we get the dictionary from here. Maybe we can say that this is unknown. And then this should get us some messages back that are typed, which is nice. Is this? Yeah, it's async. So I should await this. And now, if my calculations are correct, if I actually render m index hero here, we should see the Greek string appear. Bam! Did it! Nailed it! Sartak, your support has made us do something cool, for sure. So our first internationalized string is in, and if I go to my purple Chrome, here I do get redirected all the time. So that's weird. But I can open an incognito purple Chrome, and still I get redirected. What's this about? This is dozy. All right, made it. Just pasted the wrong link and don't get redirected out. Anyway, incognito Chrome that has English as the preferred language, you can see that we're still in the English string, but on this TL Chrome where Greek is my preferred language, we see the Greek string. So nailed it. All you have to do is do all the language strings for your app. And if you have images, like maybe localize the images as well, but I would just abstract this away, to be honest. And then you're good to go. So let's do our login button too. So here, so the cool thing with our custom method is that we know that we don't have any other string other than index hero, and we can use it here, and it's a bit insane. But we can go back to our JSON message and say that we can have a login key, maybe we'll be using all the time. And where we actually saying like login like this, I think so. And in Greek, that would be synthete. And then if we go to that page and actually use the login string, here you go. Greek accomplished, still in English if the user prefers English more. So bam, done. And again, that could be all that you need. You don't need to prefix things with your language. You don't need separate domains for a different language. You don't need extra libraries, and you don't need to remove the middleware that you already have. Oh, here there's like some typing that we'll need to do. But the point is you can add to your existing deployed app internationalization in a few steps. So it took us a while, like we stumbled upon a few bits, but still like less than an hour, and internationalization is going. Now the hard work is going to be adding all the language strings in. But it can be done for sure, just a matter of developer experience. How can we enhance the developer experience? We're going to try, so we didn't make our own getter for international messages, but we'll try to use tools, like popular tools that make our life easier. We're going to use Paraglide JS. And they recently, Samuel had a great talk on this subject in the Svelte Summit. But if I have one criticism about the inlang ecosystem, it's like there is too much simply to this, simply to that, and just do like this and that. That kind of holds me back, because I look at the docs and I'm trying to figure things out and I can't. And I'm like, but it's simple. They say it's simple. Why can I not figure it out? What's wrong with me? But the truth is, they're experts. They live and breathe internationalization. So that's why to them it's simple. But to me, like a common mug, then it's a bit harder. Hey Paul, nice to see you in the chat again. I call it live coding and chill, or Next.js and chill, which in hindsight sounds like Netflix and chill. So that's a cooler name and a bigger pun than live coding and chill. So Paraglide JS, it makes things simpler, but I wouldn't call it simple. So we'll go through the steps and see how it can help us today. Another thing that inlang has is that so long as you adhere to the format, it does have a way to edit the messages in a browser UI. So instead of going to your en and JSON files and all of that, you can actually have some nice UI and set things up there. How do you find it? Again, it's hard to navigate this site, but it's the Think message editor that's the one we're talking about. Of course, if you actually open it, you go to like the inlang editor, so Think doesn't appear again as a name. I don't know if it's a code name or something. But yeah, it's it's interesting to say the least. And we can find the repository we already have. Just for a demo. For the SvelteKit dashboard, we've done this. Here, you can do this for open source and private repositories. It will ask you to sign in if you want to make changes, and if it's a private repository, it will ask you to log in. just to be able to see what's there. But it won't ask you for money, which is amazing. What a cool project. And you can see here that I have this nice UI to help me edit my messages. You cannot add new keys, which is a bit of a bummer. I would love if I was able to add new keys like here. But hey, you can have everything. And you do have access to the machine translations as well. So if you create all your English, like hero language keys, and then push it up for review, you can just go here and manually type the ones you know of, or get a head start by pressing the machine translate button. So you have like this warning that's like, maybe machine translation is not like the panacea. Maybe you want something else. So yeah, in this instance, especially with Greek and English, there are quite a few variations. So it cannot understand that create in this context, just a word in the context that I'm going to use it, is that it means creation, I guess, or you need to create, like transitive verb. I don't even remember what this was, but it wasn't I create, I actively create. You wouldn't use it like that. Maybe that's the difference between internationalization and localization as well. That maybe literally when you create a new invoice, you'd say δημιουργώ, but when you are trying to create an invoice and you see it on a web page, then you say δημιουργία. So yeah, some subtlety there, but this is cool. You can even go there and add the language tag, but I guess you need to fork the project, which is fine. This is a bit surprising though. Why do I need to fork the project? I own this project. Anyway, doesn't really matter. You can go and fork the project and add languages there if you wish. And we will be adding this to the Next.js dashboard too. That's the goal. But you don't need to use this. There are other cool things that Paraglide JS gives you besides the browser, or conversely, you can set up the inlang config and only use it for the nice browser UI and editor support, and never use Paraglide itself. Speaking of editor support, you may see that when you start typing in a different language, VSCode flips out, but you can fix this. I do have the C-spell plugin for little squigglies when I make a spelling mistake. And I think I need to go. Your friend Paul asked whether he should power watch my stream. If he means bins, yeah, go on. I'd say find the videos, watch the videos first, because they are more condensed information about learning engineering and cool stuff you can do. And if your friend likes my style, then go on to the live streams which are a bit more meandering. So Cispa, what I'm trying to do, the squigglies. Let's look at the other projects. What am I doing there? So I should have a VS Code settings, C-spell, language, and the language is there. That's all we need. But how did I do it? Is it like C-spell here? Sure. So open the like command comma would open the preferences, and for this workspace, I want different languages. And the languages that I want, I think this has changed very recently, or not. Right, so en el, that's what I want. In this one, that creates the setting station that says in this repository, English and English, in English and Greek is what you'll find for now. So now, no squigglies here. It is a separate plugin to add the Greek dictionary, for example, but I do have it, so this works, and it will suggest, it will kind of try to complete. And for adding plugins here, there is a tab for plugins, and there is a marketplace for it, and all the plugins are free. So here, the extensions directory is where all the plugins live. There are some recommended ones that invariably are not good. But in specific projects, if you check them out, if you check out the source code, they may have recommended extensions JSON. So the first time you check them out and open VSCode, it will tell you, do you want to install the recommended plugins? And you can say yes, and then you get all the good plugins or the related plugins for that repository. I make an effort to add an extension JSON in most of my open source projects, so you can have a look at what I usually use. And the one that's really good for this one is the inlang extension, which has been updated today, but I hope that it still works, because in the previous live stream it wasn't working. In between it was working very well and it was super cool. Let's see if it's gonna work today. We'll see how it's gonna help us out. Right, so let's actually add inlang, because I don't want to translate all the files that we have here through traditional means. I want it to be a bit easier, and there are a few concerns. For example, let's look at this. We have this get dictionary method we made up. Even though we are dynamically importing only one dictionary, we're still importing the whole dictionary. So if you have 1,000,000 or 10,000 strings, 10,000 places of copy that you want to localize in your app, that's quite a big file, and you won't want to ship that to the user. The user doesn't need to see that. In this page, they only need to see 2 different strings, and that's it. So only send them those 2. And in our case, in this page, because this is a server component, it will only use those 2 strings. That's fine. But if it was a client component that's a bit further in, you should have the parent component pass the strings all the way there. And I guess that's why on this directory we've said that this is server only, to ensure that we only load the whole dictionary on the server and it doesn't get shipped on the client. But then what happens if you have a component that's like super nested in? You'll have to either use the children way of passing things to React components, or keep passing properties deep into components, which is not the best experience. So we'll see if inlang will help us. Question from Paul before we move on. Given a candidate in an interview scenario, do voice express a weakness as distracted or lack of focus, which is easier to emphasize as a weakness, or are there more? There are like 1,000,000 weaknesses, and there are definitely more marketable ones that you can say is like, oh, I'm too obsessed with detail or whatever, but there is still like a drawback. But it depends on how honest you want to be. If you really find this to be a problem, that you find yourself getting distracted, then feel free to list it as your weakness. The important thing with those interviews is that they want to know what you're doing to mitigate that. I suppose the interviewers really like if you have a weakness, whatever one it is, and that you're aware of it and are working to mitigate it. So if it's distraction, you should say, I've implemented this system, like I've been using the Pomodoro method, where for 25 minutes I'm fully focused on one thing and I never check anything else. I don't check the chat or whatever. And then I get 5 minutes break, and then 25 more of work, 5 minutes break, and it's been working out for me. So I think that's key, like other than picking the specific weakness that everyone's gonna love. Pick one that's true to you, but also try to have the way you're mitigating and trying to overcome it. Which it's not just for the interview. In reality, if you've identified that you have this weakness, and try to mitigate it and make your life a bit easier. But interview scenarios are definitely like, I don't like cookie cutter questions, and I don't like giving like the same answer. So in a different interview, I would always give like a different answer for sure. But that's just me. That's bad interview advice. just practice one answer and it will get you further. And don't joke around and say kryptonite is my weakness or something like that. Like maybe I've done that in the past, but that's by the by. All right, so time for inlang. I've hyped it up. Let's see how cool it is and how usable it is with Next.js, because I haven't used it with Next.js. All I know is that it's simple. So that it's very intense, like use this and get started immediately. And you get all of this. So again, it's telling us that we should probably commit our work. So let's do so. I forgot that we had some problems in middleware, didn't we? So it thinks that this is read only, but can I just say that this is an array? Can I say this is string? Mutable type string, that's insane. But yeah, let's say unknown as string. Gonna be fine. And we can call the is available locale. What would we call the method? Yeah. And this we can say that this should be available locale. All right. So TypeScript is happy. We can amend our commit. And now we can run the inlang wizard again. Are you using VSCode? Yes. So what did this thing do? It added something to our build command. So instead of just next build, it's compiling our translations and then it's building. I don't think you need to pass this flag. It's also added the inlang Paraglide package. At the end, instead of alphabetically. So that's not great. But hey, still pre-release. But they've been working hard for like the past week with this. It's been awesome work there. And they've added the inlang JSON, which is another thing that I find hard to find documentation for. So let's go through it. So this, I made this joke before, but they do publish a schema of what this object is supposed to look like, and then you open it and you're like, of course, now it makes perfect sense. I know what to put in there. Like, don't you? Easy. Even if a JSON format is unreadable. But what you should be specifying, and what Paraglide helpfully does it up for us, is the source language tag. In our case, it is indeed English. You can specify all the language tags that you have. In our case, it's en and el. It also has some lint rules that are helpful if we run the inlang cline command to check for missing translations or other problems. Identical patterns if you're using the same one again, like that sort of thing. And also, it's setting up inlang to know what type, how you're defining your translations. So in our case, it's a JSON object and there is the JSON parser, but Paraglide has its own plugin message format to parse the translation files. And in our case, it does look like JSON, but it needs to be flat. I guess it's one of those problems. And it can also support more machine-friendly code, but I'm not a machine, so I am gonna use the JSON style format. And importantly here, we're saying where our messages live, and it's gonna be, here it says messages, but in our case, we've put them in source messages. And then the language tag. So language tag is going to be en.json and el.json. And that should be true. And it also created this VSCode extension file to helpfully tell us that we should be using the inlang extension. But since we added an extension file, let's add like all of these here. So git ignore is good. Tailwind CSS, we're using it here. Essential ESLint. I guess for this project where we did set it up, yes, sure. Prettier, essential, GitHub Actions, we're using them in this project, it's handy. The inline extension we're gonna make use of now. .env for .env files. Playwright, we're using it in this project. Prisma, we are using in this project. And spellchecker for English and Greek, sure. And not Svelte, not in this one. Not today. So that's what Paraglide set up for us. Question is, will the build step work? And second question, can I even compile? So I will have generate i18 step and tell it to try to Paraglide JS compile according to this. So let's see. I'm run generate i18. Not found. Did I name it something else? Did I trim it? Am I in a different project altogether? It looks like I'm in the correct one. Paraglide JS not found. Interesting. So we are using ban, which does cause some problems with things that want to add things into your not modules bin directory. So there is a Paraglide JS here. So why didn't it run? Let's try to manually do it. Required option. So the one that I deleted was actually required. I did miss quite a lot of things. Should have deleted first. So apparently we do need this project tag. It doesn't automatically figure it out. Copying the wrong things. All right, so this did something. Let's see what it did. Now in the source directory, we have this Paraglide directory that is git ignored, you don't commit it in version control, which gives you this runtime file that has some helper files to set the language tag, for example, and get the current language tag. And also it has compiled specific methods according to the JSON objects that we have. So that's cool. Did it actually do it in the correct project? was looking at the other one. Did it do the same thing? Paraglide folder, runtime looks the same. And the messages one, I saw like too many. I was like, well, what's happened here? And indeed, we have exported methods. Paraglide has created dedicated methods to run wherever we want some translated text, which makes them easily to like tree sake, is what the kids call it nowadays, and therefore easy to use in client components, because they'll only be using the one method they want for their copy text and not every translation that you have. So this means a few things. It does mean say goodbye to server only to this, say goodbye to loading dictionaries here. We can still keep the default locale and each available locale helpers here, but in our page we cannot get the dictionary like this anymore. What we want is to import the correct method from those compiled methods there. So in our case, M is actually going to be R as M from at Paraglide messages. So M suddenly will have an index hero method to run and a login method to run as well. And now everything should work the same, except we haven't set the language tag. We haven't called the set language tag method. Here it does say, according to what you're doing here, like, you know, follow these examples, but they aren't most straightforward. Interestingly, here it does say just Paraglide JS, like it will just work without specifying directory. Oh well. The thing is that we need to set the language somewhere. So let's see. We don't need the locale here, which is cool. It does mean that if Next.js does do like partial pre-rendering, then maybe like the nested components can be pre-rendered, even though our HTML coming in first will not be, the core layout will not be. So let's see how far this magic goes. If in our middleware file here, before the new headers or after the new headers, doesn't really matter, we set language from Paraglide. Does that change anything? No. And I am going to restart the server just in case. Question number 2. If on my core layout I set language tag to locale, does that change things? Force it with this ignore now and see if it works. It does. So long as we run it in our core layout, it will be happy. So I guess here we can get we can still do the trick. Is available locale. Like when we set this header, we know that it's not just any string or null. We know that it's one that we use, but hey. call this local from headers, like X local, why not? X local is this, local is this, and now, I'll actually use it here. And now everything works. Oh. Why didn't this work? Right. Sorry for this. I'm just trying to say that X local is this. Local is either this or this. Then we can set the language tag to the locale and the HTML lang to the locale as well. And that should be fine. Cool. So I will try to push this, change, and see if we can see the nice browser UI. This counts as a refactor. i18n inlang. So having run this method in middleware and the core layout, I do think the language tag is going to be correct for anywhere else, but maybe it's not going to be correct for server actions and stuff like that. We'll investigate. If needed, we can always get the correct language from the headers or somewhere else, or force a language. But for now, it seems to work enough. So we can open a PR here, this one. And now, if we go to the inlang thingy and say that I want to do stuff to this repository, contact list. No, pasted on the wrong thing. Went too far back. So let's go to the editor again. This is very hard to navigate. This is the one that wants repository URL. Can't find the inline configuration, but if I go to the branch, then it can find it, and I can do like a change, and it's gonna commit it straight to the branch, which is quite cool. And just to look at the agenda before going to the chat, we've added the inline integration. I guess we can do like one more page or something, or we can bring in all the other translations that we have from the other project. And then we can do the language toggle. So now we are respecting the user preference and we're showing the page in their preferred language, but maybe they'll want to change it. Maybe they're like, okay, I prefer Greek, but in this instance, I'm trying to help someone else out and I want to see what's the English version. So we'll add a drop-down to be able to manually select and say, I want to see the English version. So, questions from Paul. What is a good collection of words to understand what, why, and how the importance of schemas being adequate? And can you recommend a JS schema playlist on this platform? So this platform being YouTube, I'm not sure. I guess like I am a fan of GraphQL, and the whole premise of GraphQL is you should know the schema of an API, and you should always feel safe that it's exactly that. The schemas should be dependable. So reading up on GraphQL may show you a bit more on the importance of schemas, while also exposing you to like some cool tech as well. So instead of more traditional REST APIs, GraphQL is a different type of thing. If you want to know more about schemas, that's one resource, I would say. That's a out-of-the-box thinking way to learn a bit more about schemas, reading about why GraphQL may be a good idea. And for a quick explanation about schemas, because you don't want runtime errors, I guess. So if you are talking to another backend service and there is no schema, no documentation, no nothing to tell you this backend service is giving back this. If you request this, you get this back. If you request that other thing, you get that other thing back. If you don't know what you get back, then how are you gonna use the data? You need to know what you get back. And if it doesn't adhere to an agreed upon schema, then you'll have breakage, you have runtime errors. I guess the example here is, it's kind of hard to find. If that other backend API says, I'm gonna nest everything inside a hero object, and you don't know that, and you just try to access name, then it's not gonna work. If it starts by nesting everything into a hero object, and you implement like that, so you do hero.name, and then they change and say, oh, well, actually, for some characters, like for Anakin Skywalker, we're gonna put him as villain, but only from some episodes. And then you get the response back for Anakin, and there is no hero.name, and you get a runtime error. So knowing the schema is what keeps your app from breaking, and using the data that you get back. Knowing the shape of the data you're playing with is very important. And that's another reason actually that I like TypeScript. I like defining that this is the shape of the data that I'm working with. All right, so is it time for the toggle? No, I said we'll do one more page. So what we'll actually do is, I think I'm gonna steal all the localization strings that I did on the previous stream and offline. So all these messages, steal them. Oh, I have the schema here too. Marketing hero is what I called it, and login. Oh well, so those two, get them. Go back to the Next.js version of this app. Delete those messages. Paste those messages. Run Paraglide. And now I need to adapt the page and say that this is marketing hero actually. And what is this like sign in? Is it login? Login with no uppercase. So that looks fine to me, although why is this not English anymore? Interesting. This is Greek. Of course, it's all Greek to me. Let's just double check. Like the one that is supposed to be English, it didn't suddenly become Greek, did it? Oh, of course, keep getting redirected. Right, so English is English, but Greek is not quite Greek. So what's the breaks? What's the deal? Like this set language tag must not be doing what it's supposed to be doing. Because if I call set language tag here, to say like EL, yeah, it does change. So what's that about? If this is not a client component anymore. So we do seem to lose the context of what the language tag is again. How did it work before? We call it in the root layout. We still call it in the middleware. Do we really need to call it in like every method ever? That doesn't sound good. And I can't call this like use effect, surely. This is gotten from the correct library. This page, which is part of the layout, it's not getting the correct message. Now it is. What? Okay. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. Let's do the language switch and then I'll see if that's an actual problem. This one did get Greek at some point. Right, so it's serving the last one. Interesting. So now every time I refresh, it's Greek. But here it stays Greek, and then if I refresh again, it becomes English. So that's weird. Super weird. I wonder if it's a problem with a compiler or something. Let's see. I have a Next.js example. So let's have a look at that. I imagine they're not doing anything in the next config. No. They're not saying anything interesting here. In the middleware, they're doing the X language tag trick. Maybe that's where I picked it up from actually. And they're doing the request, sure. This Paraglide next adapter. Alright, so maybe they're wrapping the application in the adapter. Yeah, I see. So let's try adding this adapter that they made up. And it's not a client component. That's weird. Just a component. Just returns children. Don't quite get it. Like all it does is set the language tag. Oh well, let's see if it's gonna work. So they call it Paraglide JS, like Paraglide adapter TSX. Why not? It has its own set language tag. I don't know why you do this. I guess we'd copy all of this. Oh, and it doesn't actually do anything. It's just by reading this file, it does it. It runs this method in this file. That's insane. Wow. That's naughty, I would say, to say the least. And it is running it in a callback. It is executing it in a callback, not immediately. But why? So if we just do like this, does that change anything? Probably not. Yeah, it doesn't change anything. If we run these in the callback, maybe then it's gonna be happy. Ah, but we need it here too. But that one is actually right. Anyway, let's run it in both places. Didn't look like it worked. Oh, and yet it did. Wow. And yet it did. So if I don't run them here, it doesn't work. But if I check the headers again in the callback of this method, then it starts working. Yeah, for whatever reason now it has like a 100% success rate. But I don't understand why. Oh well. Weird. What's super weird is what they want us to do with the adapter method that they have here. Which is just a component that does nothing, it just renders its children. But in this file, the adapter, they're also executing the setLanguageTag method in a callback. So it's just a way to do like a mutation. So you don't even need to like have the component. I guess it must be forcing like a redraw or something. I don't know. Sounds dodgy to me. I'm not going to use it. But this crazy thing seems to work. So fair enough. All right. So now that this actually works, let's do one more page. Let's do the login page. Why not? And recommendation was from a live stream was to add the Svelte inspector where you can command click and go to the component that's related to what you're highlighting, which was amazing. Like, thanks for that tip. Thanks a million. But now it does mean that in Next.js I have to manually search for things like an animal. So here is the component we're talking about. And we can import star as them from @Paraglide messages. I did have an alias for this in the other app, but I think that's short enough. And we can do please log in. And will that ever be internationalized? Internationalized? Who knows? Oh, password should also be internationalized. So yeah, this component is further in. I'm gonna kill and start the server harder. Let's see if that changes things. It doesn't look like it does. Again, if I were to set language tag here and set it to EL, it will change it, but that's not what we want. So for some reason, this login form component, maybe because it's a client component, it has lost the knowledge of which language should be used. I can pass it in as an option here, but like, do I always look at the document to pass it in? It doesn't feel feasible. Do they do anything else here, or does that trick actually work? Oh, and here the lang is the language tag. Interesting. So in the layout file, will that be correct? It looks correct to me. Like ELN doesn't look like it's bouncing, it's changing. So that's neat. But I guess there must be some problems with Webpack or something. And it's not creating, it's not just getting the correct messages. But alright, they're telling me to create an adapter like this. They're not doing anything else crazy in the middleware or whatever. They don't have like nested client components though either, so I'm not sure. I just don't understand how this is ever gonna work. Maybe just because this is it's maybe forcing like a render. I don't really know. Don't know. And yeah, let's see. They're saying in the layout, render everything inside that weird adapter. And that adapter, we're just running this method which sets the language tag. And also we're not running it here. So yeah, as expected, this does nothing. All right, so Paraglide adapter does nothing. Some work to be done there. Our problem is that this is a client component. I'm almost certain. And how do we get the correct language for client components? I guess maybe if you have like context or something, it will make them have it, but I'm not sure. Really not sure. And the way these magic methods that get created work is that they check the language tag, like here, and then they return whatever it should be. Let's reload this window. Started flipping out. Good thing is the inlang integration works, so you can see the actual string next to the method you're calling. So that's very nice. That's sweet to see. So this is from the plugin. And it doesn't have to do, like, if you actually do like lang el, does it work? Please look in to continue. It will always show the default language, which is fine. Right, so how do I make this client component get the correct message? The EL one. I don't know, and maybe that's not to be done in this stream. Maybe I'll need to debug it or raise an issue or something. It could be that if we make this a client component, then it's gonna be like happy. Oh, also, that's not the correct thing. It should be xlocale, right? So was I wrong? Let's see. Let's go to the layout again. And just in case, like I don't think that's gonna work. Just in case, let's try it again. And I guess thankfully it doesn't work, because that'd be mental. But yeah, not sure. If I make this a client component, it won't have access to the headers. So that's not great. It's not great indeed. Yeah, client components have access to the document element, I guess. But what? Should they call set language tag and have it be like I don't think they'll have access to this, right? Because it's a client component. So let's have them do what we're doing in layout, and let's forget this Paraglide adapter craziness. There happened. And let's try to do this really in a client component this time. Yeah, so header is not available there. Fine. But we have document element, lang, and that should give us the lang attribute. So that works. So this client component is taking the document element to set the correct language. And now this works. This works sometimes. Only sometimes. It doesn't make sense. And it starts with next error as well. So that's pretty bad. Should we be awaiting anything? So here it says like next error to start with, and I wonder why. Document is not defined, because sometimes that component, even though it's a client component, it gets rendered on the server, I guess. Yeah. Yeah, so if no type of document. String undefined here. What's that? Right. So that's something. But I guess there should be a ternary here on whether we use the headers or not. So, like two cases. If type of document is undefined, and what we're gonna do. So if it's undefined, we'll do whatever we do in layout here. Because then we're on the server, surely. But we do say use client, so maybe that's not gonna work, actually. So that's not great. But hey. Just double checking if this works. Else, yeah, the moment we do next headers here, this flips out because it's like, I should be here on the client, probably. So that's not great. And the idea was that all of this all of the Paraglide stuff was to make it easy to work with client components as well. So that's not great. Still cannot understand what language we're on. So yeah, that's definitely something to raise with the Paraglide library. So all of this craziness, blah blah. How does this work for client components too? What else is available for us? The Paraglide library. Also, what more do we have? Ah, it's just the switch language quickie. Should have done that first. On set language tag. I guess that never changes. Now. We do have a language tag, I guess, here. So we would like tag, language tag. Does that ever change? So this does nothing, but use effect. Have a use effect that looks at this tag. Has the tag as a dependency. Yeah, the language tag here is en. I can only imagine it's because that's the default language. And for server components, this runs and it tells every other component that actually the lang is el. But by the time we get to this client component, there is nothing telling it actually the language should be el. So how do we do that? Maybe with context, but I don't really know. I'm not gonna try to guess at this point. I'll just do the language toggle switch in a regular component and call it the string. Let's move on. Do I have a label for password? Maybe not, actually. Right, so email should be universal. And since we have the Paraglide integration and the inlang plugin, you can actually do here extract message, and you put in the key and you can say password. And then it can even replace what you have there with whatever you want. And here it's also telling me that this doesn't exist because I don't have a watcher to actually compile these. But if I run it, then that exists now. But it has an underline because it's saying, oh, we're missing a tag for Greek. So you can either go here and add it like an animal, or you can use the nice UI. Up to you. And I have enjoyed using like lowercase for these and then having CSS to do the uppercase or lowercase as needed. Because then if I need to use like just the one word again, I can. So uppercase, back to uppercase. Right, so we won't worry about the client components for now. So wait for another day. What we want is a nice language toggle here. So we can have a little form. So our core layout, just for this, the children and the body, doesn't have like header or footer or anything, but it could. But for now, let's just do it in this page. Maybe we can put it in the layout. So it's gonna be this. It looks great. And let's copy the footer from here. Let's see what I've done. Since here we have like a UI directory for no reason, we can actually, I will do it like I would. So I would collocate the footer here, footer tsx export const footer, and it's gonna be this, and everything that's class. Check the class name. Yeah, we should have internationalization for this. So import m star as m from Paraglide messages. No enhanced forms in the Next.js, sadly. Different way to have enhanced forms, so we're not going to do that. And no on-chain handlers. And no, it's like that. So it looks like in this project, I also have labeled languages. It looks a bit nicer. So let's copy that as well. So this is an array of objects. Each object has the locale, that is an available locale, and then a nice label, potentially in the language that we want. And in React, we map that. And we return an option for these, each of these. And we also need a key prop. And selected, what's selected gonna be? Language tag, will that even work? So All right, so it feels like we should be able to render this. Maybe here. Not bad. Pretty good, even. And it is on the correct language. But we do need a bit of cap, don't we? Now we have this drop down, we can go to en, and we can go back to el, but nothing happens. What do we want to happen? Well, in order for the user to be able to choose their own language, to override their browser language preference, which I guess I should show in this episode, like I've talked about it. But here, as a user, I have set that Greek is my preferred language, and then you can do English UK, and then English US, and then just English and French and whatnot. Maybe I should add Spanish. But if I were to make English UK first, and we reload this page, we fall back to English. But it's a bit unreasonable to say that if you want to see a specific page in a different language, you should go and mess with your preferred language settings. Maybe not. But users would definitely be like, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to bother with it. So let's make this language toggle work for them. The way we'll do that is make this form, set a quickie for them of the language preference, and we're going to look for that quickie first before we check their language headers. Hello, Rodbin Studio in the chat. I like coding too. Love it, even. So back to the middleware file, where we're doing all this stuff, like checking the headers to see, like, do they have an accepted language header? If yes, what are their accepted languages? What should we default to? Blah, blah, blah. We're only going to do that if we don't have a language quickie set. I'm sipping coffee while thinking about this. So language quickie equals, is it the request quickies? Maybe just local. And if they have a local quickie, oh, did the GitHub Copilot just make this up? It's not a real thing. It's the request headers quickies. 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 That's correct. What's the problem? Request has no quickies? Is this not what we did? Is it because we're running it in this middleware? Doesn't make sense. We are in the upper outer documentation. I guess we can get all the cookies from the header, surely. But that's just handy. That's how I used to do it like many years ago. Too many. So this is fine. But even though this should have, they're not calling cookies, right? What's this supposed to be? Now they're saying that, well, they have a getter or something. If I just do cookies, doesn't make. If I do cookies get local, breaks. If I do cookies local, so yeah, request cookies, even though this says that it's the request cookies, it's nothing. I think that Next.js must be doing something weird here. Surely. What else could we do here? This is the response. Will this response have the same cookies? Let's see. So const response is this. Like, we won't do it like that, but I'm just so curious now. Undefined, that's fine. So the response does have this helper, not why. Okay, are they doing something that I'm missing here? No, the request is just the next request. The problem is that we're using this through next auth, which must be doing something funky to the request, I guess. But cookies is something, I guess. So there is get cookie header. Is that the cookie header? I think so. So this is something just unreadable. And that's why usually you have like helpers, like the cookie helper. So let's try to get this in and see if we can do something cool with it. Needs types to and we can say so it's cookies and do cookie parse, I guess. cookies, I guess, because that one is singular. Not yet. So it's an object now. If the local cookie is set, or I guess we could even do if is available local cookie, then local is a local cookie, else we're going to do everything we were doing with the user except headers. So all of this will only do it if there is no local cookie. And then we still append this as needed. Everything should still work the same. Sometimes it flips out, sometimes it doesn't. But it looks fine. And do I have like a weird local cookie? Not set. Good. Now, in theory, if we manage to set this cookie, we should be good to go. So if we make us switch into this dropdown, submit this form and set a cookie, we're golden. So let's double check. Server actions. Cookies. Nothing. Cookies. There you go. So now it's like from the cookies thingy. I guess we don't have access to this. Do we have access to this? From Next headers. In the middleware, let's double check. I guess we just do. All right, no need to bring in that library at all. Looks like. So we're using this helper method, not bringing in that library. Go to packaging, remove it. Both this and this not needed. Should have this in the docs. That's fine. Right, so server action. When we submit this form, we want to set some cookies. And the way we do form magic stuff with Next.js is with server actions. So here, should I do it in line? Maybe I will. Maybe I will. So right in this action, let's say I have a sync one. Should it be a sync? Maybe not. Yeah, doesn't matter. And in here, I'll say use server. And I'm gonna set some cookies. The cookie I'm gonna set is the locale. But the locale is gonna be, I guess this gets form data, surely. So const locale From data get lang. And then if is available locale, I'm gonna set it. And that's it? I guess so. I guess that's the bricks. But now, how do I submit this form? Well, we can say that this select on chains. We can get the current target. From the current target, we can get the form and submit, but not submit what's out. We had this problem before. It's actually request submit that we need to call in meta frameworks like this. Is it a client component? This should be a client component, I guess. So this footer use client. Where else do we do use client? Here? Sure. But now, this component is importing the header stuff. So we need to export this action actually. So let's create a little directory called footer and put our footer component in there and give it an actions TS file. That's gonna have a use server at the top, and it's gonna export const set theme, set language, set locale actually, and import this, form data is going to be form data, the native object, and now we're not going to be using any of this directly. We're going to indirectly using it because we're going to bring again the set locale action. So get this out, Need of this. And another layout, the footer, we need to bring it in from footer. Oh, but that wasn't the problem. The problem is that I added this on chains handler. Whoops. No. Yeah. So I do want this to be a client component. And now that I've extracted the use server stuff in the headers and the cookies and all of that to a different file, I'm actually able to use client here. Cool. So in theory, current language is English, it says, but it's not true because it's a client component. It has a problem where it doesn't know where we are. Oh no, disaster. But it does set the quickie here, and that's indeed in Greek correctly. And if I set it to like I cannot for the life of me. Now I've set it to English, and yet it's not respected. Interesting. Right, we'll debug it side by side. The path is the correct path. Indeed. Now we do have a locale quickie set. Did we call it locale in middleware? Oh, it's a classic where this has a value, right? So if that exists, then get the value, right? So now it's gonna work surely, yeah. So when you get a cookie with the cookies helper here, you get an object with the name of the cookie you got and the value of the cookie you got. So you need to do that value. So thankfully we figured that out. Now, if we do have the local cookie, things are fine. We can toggle around and eventually it will work. Yeah, it's a bit dodgy, not gonna lie. But our big problem is that this thing, because it's a client component and we have problem with client components, it always assumes English for whatever reason. So what did we say we could do here? Use effect and do like document element lang, set language tag. % chance of working. Maybe less. But yeah, at least behind my head, you can see that the cookie is set correctly, and in theory, that's how it should be working. But there's something going on with the client components that makes us not quite use it. But you can see that we switched to English, local is English, this changed correctly, and Greek also changes correctly. So for the server components, it works perfectly. It's just when we get to a client component, it's lost. And I can't imagine the docs saying something about client component. It's saying here, like on the client, you got to resolve this like this. Oh, they are doing the document element lang, sure. But does the layout ever run on the client? It's one of the questions I have. You restart everything as well. It looks like this runs once, which makes sense, but it should be running like at least twice. There's another error boundary as well. Oh yeah, because it's React. Because it's React, the value should be default value. They have a different way to do it. Yeah. So default value equals language tag, and don't use selected, which is probably nicer, to be honest. So now it worked. When you toggle it works. Sometimes it kind of works. Yeah, unclear. I'll need to come back to this and see how to make it work with client components. Here it says, here's a high-level understanding of how to provide, how to adapt ParaglideJS to any framework. This adapts it to a fictitious meta framework like Next.js, SolidStart, SvelteKit, or Next. It's like, we're not gonna show you what exactly you're gonna do, but here's the rough idea of what you're gonna do, which is fair enough. You can support like every framework in the world. Right, so we are doing this on the middleware, which always runs on the server. We're doing this on the layout as well, just in case. Sometimes we're on the client, and I guess that's the case where we should be doing something. And here it's saying get us to a dedicated route, which we don't want to do. But I don't think that's the problem here. But yeah, on the client. On chains, we can do the request submit, but we could also put language tag here. Maybe that will change something. That changes the language. And let's go to the big screen. Let's go to the big screen on an incognito window. English, correct? That's my preferred language. Now I'm gonna set a cookie. This becomes correctly Greek because this is a, oh, that's my face. Awesome. Because this is a client component and we run this, and that's great, but I guess Next.js doesn't really know that the rest of it should be recompiled and served for me. But if I refresh enough, it's gonna get it, but it's gonna take a few times. And this button, like, it's flickering a little bit. I think that's the font, that it only happens here. But yeah, this worked less smoothly than it works for SvelteKit, which kind of makes sense. SvelteKit is a bit more transparent when it comes to the magic that it does. It has some very, very magic things, but usually it's closer to the metal, I guess. So if you want to do things like mess with characters and cookies and form actions, for example, it's a bit more transparent. While here, Next.js, there's quite a lot of magic happening, so I'm not sure where to call the methods. But the fundamentals are this. And again, if we're willing to do just do it based on the accept languages and don't use Paraglide, which is like a made up thing, then it is gonna work just fine. And yeah, having the route paths like en, el would also help, but usually that's not the case. Usually you haven't designed your app like that, and you're adding internationalization after the fact. If you're a big e-commerce shop, of course, it pays off to have dedicated routes for every language and every locale you support, but not everyone is a huge e-commerce shop. All right, I think with that, we are gonna call it a stream. This is still successfully respecting our locale, even though the actual internationalization bit is finicky. Offline, I'll have a look. I will add the rest of the translations for the rest of the screens. You can click around here and log in if you look hard enough for the password. Or you can just hack it, I suppose. But that's it for now we won't be adding another language. This took a long time, and we'll see what we're gonna do on Friday. As always, feel free to suggest what you'd like to see me cover, what you'd like to see me explore. Sometimes I have an idea what I'm gonna do, and we're going through it, which was kind of the case today. I had like a plan of how this would be done, but was probably more the case on Friday with this VSCode stream. Was more hands-on with that, but I was half trying out things as well. Anyway, sometimes I have a clear plan and we go through things fast. Sometimes it's something new for me. I've done a little research, but you'll get to see me experience something new live and roll with the punches as it happens, which is also exciting, at least for me. So feel free to suggest either for me to cover something that I'm very experienced with or something that I see for the first time. The point is, I like to show things that you find interesting, things that will help you grow as engineers, as people even. So let me know. Your feedback is very welcome. Thank you very much for joining me today. It was a pleasure as always. I'll see you next time on Friday, and the subject is pending. Let me know what you'd like to see. Have a lovely day, have a lovely evening, have a lovely rest of the week. See you later.